Three. Hi, this is Wilsfer with Abysmal Hymns, and I am honored today to have a legendary artist with me who has, you guys know I'm a big fan of, none other than Jarboe, who has a new album called Sightings that was released on April 3rd, and it's a really captivating listen. It is inspired by a very specific bird, and I want to have her tell us about that, and see here are some of the inspiration that animal brought about to create this album.
Oh, well, he was singing every day and I couldn't see it. And it was a musical performance that was impressive. An amazing array of songs and patterns. And I'd never heard anything quite like it before. And so I couldn't see it because it was hiding in the leaves because it's the same color green as the leaves. So I finally decided to go out and just confront where the sound was coming from. And eventually, after doing that, it hopped forward on a branch after some days and looked at me, and then it became this ritual of going out there every single day and just rap, not moving, just looking directly at it. And he was looking directly at me. He has these intense red eyes. and and so it became this performance, of just me, as the audience and this video as the performer. And so this was something that went on for quite some time until it occurred to me I should record it. So I went out there and I recorded it on the phone, and it was a very, very long recording. And so I had to cut it down to, what I used on this album, 7 minutes, I think. So it could have, the recording that I made was over 45 minutes long. So, so, so that was, how this whole thing started was just this, encounter with something with nature outdoors that was acting in a rather, familiar way with me, looking forward to performing for me every day, and this whole ritual of it. And it really touched me very, very deeply. So that's how it all started.
Awesome, and I think that kind of contributes to the very meditative ambient quality of the album because
Hmm.
it's like with meditation, it's all about being present. And I think
Hmm.
that the concept behind it is very unique because we've kind of forgotten as a society about being present and paying attention to nature to notice those little things that are happening all the time.
That's right. Exactly. And that's the whole point.
So this album was recorded in four different locations. I think it was
Hmm.
Georgia,
Hmm.
Texas,
Hmm.
Italy, and Vermont. How did those different environments help shape the making of this album?
Well, because everyone that I worked with was living in those locations. So I'm in Georgia, and Thor Harris was in Texas, and Brett Robinson in Vermont. And then the former duo, Father Murphy, which is Federico and Chiara Lee, they live in Turin, Italy. So, and they recorded at various locations in Italy. So that's how it came about, was just everyone through exchanging recordings, files, that's how everything came to be. And I had done like a rough, like a draft, like an outline, and I sent that and said, okay, so replace this keyboard synthesizer, sound with the violins and cello. And so Andrea Calderon replaced my, keyboard, violin and cello with actual violin and cello. So I kind of recede with the piano and let her take over on the tracks that she's on. And so yeah, so the whole idea was, sending what I came up with and then having it replaced with analog recordings instead of just using what I was doing on the with the computer.
So, given the kind of like I talked about the meditative quality of this album. While I do see some common ground with something like uh, Soundtracks for the Blind, there's a whole different mood and a different vibration to the sound. Um, how do you see yourself? And you've touched on so many different types of feelings throughout your solo career, from working with Neurosis to doing something like this is which is on the other end of the spectrum. So do you kind of feel that, for me, my perception is that music's a very spiritual thing because it's vibrations that you're working with. So how do you
Mhm.
feel that this album and where you're at today has changed with your spiritual journey that brought you to this place?
Wow, that's a deep. That's deep. I think this is more about nature and paying attention to the environment of the outside world, and it is meditative. There's the breath track is all about focusing on breathing and in a very literal way. And the holy waters and the two versions of holy waters, that's about celebrating the Sangha. That's celebrating the group of uh, of people that are, your friends, your comrades. So that has more of a jubilation kind of a feel to it, and then the words there are taken from they're abstract words taken from a combination of Buddhist texts. So yeah, and then Francesca Sun is about a friend of mine who died, and so that's kind of an homage to her. She was a painter, and so I wanted to do a minimal kind of a poem and just have it be all about this heartfelt melody that was almost like a little like a haiku set to like a nursery rhyme, and I wanted to focus on this idea of little girls, like friends. And so that's kind of up from my heart there, and an homage to her. And she was notable. Her work was on the cover of King Crimson albums, and her husband Bill Rieflin worked in Swans, and he performed with me in Portugal one time. And I was good friends with both of them, so this was a very special track for me. So yeah, and then the Vireo track, and then the I've had people say that it was eerie, the choir in Night Fox. Well, that wasn't. It wasn't. It's kind of eerie because when you hear the vixen scream at night in the dark, and you don't know what it is rather terrifying. And so I didn't go overkill with the sound of the fox on it, but I wanted to kind of set up the environment with the kind of doomy kind of ambient sounds and the voices, and then he appears because this is a male fox doing the vixen scream.
Awesome. Well, you are probably one of my, if I had to make a Mount Rushmore of female vocalists, you would be on that alongside Kate Bush and Elizabeth Fraser and Lisa Gerrard. What was your approach when it came to the vocals for this album?
Really to not take center stage, to really kind of use it as an atmospheric quality. And so it comes forward at the very end with the reworking of Ancient Memory. And of course, the original version is on 13 Masks, which is my first solo album. And so that version is very different than this version. This version was done more like a spoken word. And then I deliberately went into atonal when I did kind of a singing thing to kind of add tension and you know, pain, I guess, behind it. And so that piece I did because I'm going to do this thing now, like I started with Illusory, which is I ended that with Man of Hate, which is a reworking of the original version of Man of Hate. And so I changed it to a theater piece, which is what it is. It's a theater piece. And so I added, like a sound of a guillotine, and I'm really driving it home what that was about. And then to say, we made this happen. We are I am the Man of Hate. Me collectively made this happen. And so the same as with of Ancient Memory. The only positive aspect about of Ancient Memory is that the nuclear bomb that I reference dropping is, it sinks into the sea at the very end of the piece, and so it's 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 destroyed by sinking and not destroying an entire country. But that's going to be something I'm going to keep doing is revisit since I have such a vast catalog. Every new thing I do now will end with a reworking of my own song, radical reworking. So that is the voices forward on ancient memory. It's all about me and my delivery of those words.
Which is cool because that allows everything to kind of come full circle, the where you were to where you are now.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting too with this album is rather than making something confrontational, it feels like there's more like finding peace in nature in this kind of chaotic world we now live in 2026.
Yeah.
Um, is that and based on, your Buddhist path, how do those things all coincide for you?
It's the idea that everything will pass, and so the anxiety and the fear, you can't run from it. You let it come in, and it embraces you, and you embrace it, and then it will pass through you. So it doesn't define you. So that's the message basically, is it doesn't define you. Your emotions don't define you, and you don't attach to the fear and to the pain. It just passes through and it leaves. So once you realize that it's not you, and you're not defined by something, then you can realize that it's just something that's passing through right now, and things will change. So that's my attitude.
Which is a good one. I mean, I always think it's more useful to be an observer of those emotions, to stop and kind of say, well, interesting that I'm feeling that right now. I don't have to let like anger um be in the driver's seat. I can just observe it as it passes by, kind of like it's a landscape and you're in a car just kind of
Yeah.
watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a song that I did when I toured with Father Murphy, Nothing is Here to Stay, and so, it's you're not being punished, and so you're not being punished by any of this, by pain, by suffering, by joy. It's all not defining you. It's all nothing is here to stay. So that's possibly the way that you can get through the chaos that we're in right now. And I have been paying attention to the chaos because that's why I performed the last tour, 2022, the December 2022 with Joseph von Weissum, who is, the lutist, notably for the soundtrack of Only Lovers Left Alive. And he works a lot with Jim Jarmusch. And so he was an incredibly talented musician. And this tour was notable for me because we did, P. Emerson Williams and I did Of Ancient Memory, but we also did Man of Hate. And I ended that as the last thing in front of all these European audiences. And there was just this silence, like, it's like I was really driving home the point, whether you thought I was talking about a leader of this country or some other country, or who you were talking about was the man of hate. But it's like, I am the man of hate was the last word that I said, and as the lyrics. And so I think that that made an impact on people. But it was definitely a commentary, an unusually, I would say, commentary on the chaos. So I
Right.
don't
And
I don't ignore that. I don't ignore that. I
but you
am
don't have to
trying.
identify with it.
Don't identify with it, but I can't ignore it because
Right.
it's part of our world. And so that's something that, I did comment on. And then I think it's important to have the idea about how something comes about.
Sure. Yeah. So, when you're comparing like this to the ambient work that you did with Swans, what would you say the biggest difference is for you creatively?
That was like, I would say that was, I started out as, like into the performance art world and doing audio installations and heavily vintage electronic processing on the voice. like contact mics all over my body and this kind of thing. So I was heading in that direction, and then I heard the Filth album, and I was impressed by it. I hadn't heard anything quite like it. It was very, very slow and very tribal, very ritualistic to me, the song Power for Power. And that's how that whole Open That Door was. I heard that and was intrigued behind it, and wanted to contact them because I wanted to interview for a zine that I was doing with friends. So that was so I went up there, and I was invited to a rehearsal and all this. So the way I would describe that whole era for me, eras, because I was in it for many different eras. The early era, which was, performing for skinheads, and being kicked and spit on and that kind of thing. that Going through that, the very slow, sluggish, intense Swans, and then moving on to where I was singing, and I was, more of a ritual piece, bowing, on my knees in front of the audience as the opener, doing blackmail and this, so kind of a sacrifice. Um, this was school. So I call those years as going to the University of Swans, because I learned so much. The discipline and the idea that mistakes, accidents can be a beautiful thing, and you can bring that into the recording. And something happening like a cut or something like that with blood, somewhere, then that goes into an album title. So I mean, it was just kind of this idea of being open and aware of everything around me, and that was and it was very, very intense. And so I think the change is that I don't have an overlord over me now. But I am aware of criticizing myself. So when you work with Michael, he's going to be, at least the many years that I was involved, he's going to be criticizing and redirecting, and frequently very thrilled with what you've done, but be prepared for do it again, do it again, do it again. And but there were times that were rare, and amazing. Like I was just talking to someone the other day about the whole burning world thing. Was there were vocals that I did as the test run through the song for the engineer, and they were like, okay, done, and I was like, okay, one take, you're out the door. So that happened too. But then say my version, the black version, level tear us apart, he was happy with the second verse, and he was okay, we'll do the first verse like you did the second verse. So it's like, so you're kind of pleasing the producer, and so I think the freedom of you know being your own producer, and being your own creator, and thinking about how you could do something differently or do something better, but also there's that door is open there for you to be your own, monitor, your own boss. So that's what I would say is different is you're pleasing yourself, and you're not pleasing someone else. So yeah, but there was a lot of rules, a lot of things that I had to adhere to. My body posture when I performed, how I wore my hair, the way that I dressed. All this was something that I had to, like being an employee in a company, and so, so, so yeah, so there was a lot of tension there, I would say. And, it was because I cared very much. And I gave my entire soul to that project. And I think that, I'm very happy with my input into it. I don't know that I got the credit, technical credit of everything I did, arranging and telling other musicians what to do and all this. And I think that was something that bothered me, was not getting all of the credit that I believe I definitely deserved, and also basically changing the trajectory of the music. And that had to do more with the skill set that somebody has, So you bring in someone with a skill set, and you take advantage of that skill set. So if you say it started getting melodic, it started focusing more on the singer and the song for a while, and all this stuff like the Bunny records did. That I think that that had to do more with taking advantage of my skill set because I was trained vocalist, trained, in many years of organ lessons, voice lessons. So that was something that was, taken advantage of, used, promoted. So, but yeah, so to answer your big question, that learning, that experience has never left me. It's always there.
And I would imagine that there's an element of ego detachment that kind of comes in because from what I've heard is that you came in like you mentioned with operatic training and then Michael just kind of deconstructed your approach to singing
Correct.
altogether.
Correct. Yes. Yes, most definitely. And he would say that I was singing too jazzy. And, I was, oh, yeah, another big one was too many notes. So that's the definition, I would say. That's the biggest one, too many notes. So I learned to play less notes on the keyboard and to sing less notes.
Which is funny because I always think of jazz as being a less is more type of thing. So that's for him to say that you were being too jazzy, but when jazz
Yeah.
is less than more.
Yeah.
Uh,
Too many notes and just strip it down. So say you come up with an idea, you hear the melody, you hear whether it's singing or whether it's playing on the keyboard or telling another musician what to play. Then you take that and then you erase, you delete, you make it more minimal and repetitive. So the if you listen to the eras where I was involved in, they're quite repetitive and I think that's an approach that I embrace still, is I like the idea of mantra and repetition instead of a whole bunch of changes in a song. I'd rather just hear something repeat, And so that was you know, a calling card. That was like a sign, of our that was a trademark, of the music that we did was it was repetitive.
right. And for me, like you mentioned the Bunny albums, but like, some a song like Love is, The Love of Life is very powerful in how you guys created that very like hypnotic wall of sound. And
Yes.
I think I can see how that skill set you've transferred over throughout your entire solo career.
Hmm. Yeah, you don't, yeah, the university teaching, that's what I'm going to call it. So it stays there, and but the one, logistic aspect was too, it taught me to be very strong and being able to adapt to any kind of situation. So, like when you're on the road or you're recording, you can't leave any kind of this is what I have to have. That's not part of it. You have to kind of go with the flow. and and yeah, so you found yourself in any number of circumstances, and you just have to not attach to that and just kind of have this attitude of, okay, well, this is now and this is what's happening now, and then it will be different tomorrow, and so that's very important. And also just I would say patience and you know just being very calm and patient with circumstances, because the circumstances were very, very intense. And I am glad that I did this one thing. If anyone paid any attention, I think they did. I would go on stage and I would make a point of putting in my earplugs when I was on stage because I wanted the audience that were near the keyboard, I wanted them to see in those days, it's cool, it's okay to protect your hearing. And so I would do that. And then some of the members that I worked with off and on, and the main one, Michael, I mean, one of them wears a hearing aid, and the other person has severe tinnitus, and so I think that I don't. I get my hearing checked every 2 years, and it's great. So I think that's something I'm very proud of. And I think today I am friends with some metal musicians, and they protect their ears. They wear earplugs, and so I'm glad that that's now become. When I last Swans concert, I've been to several concerts since I've not been working in the project, and they had earplugs right there, near the door that you can buy. So I think that it's important to remember to wear earplugs when you're around extremely loud music. Because the last show that I saw Swans do, it was brutally loud, like to the point where it was so loud you couldn't even hear the music. It was just loud. And there was a guy in front of me wearing those headphones that you wear when you shoot guns. So I don't appreciate, that level. I can see that in the early days, because it was like there's like doom almost. It was like heavy bass and drums, and you could feel it pounding in your chest. That's not what I heard this time. What I heard was like a lot of high end, and it wasn't the low intense early Swans. It was more like very high end, and so the volume, the decibel level was so intense. I had on earplugs, and it was still intense. So yeah, so I have I don't necessarily appreciate going to brutally loud concerts anymore. I go to a lot of classical concerts now.
Right. So the one time that we've kind of crossed paths was at a Behemoth, I think it was Behemoth Watain and the Devil's Blood and In Solitude played at the Old Masquerade over on North Avenue. And
Okay.
so I was very aware that you were at that point. I was like, well, it makes it because I was interviewing the singer for In Solitude, and he was a big Swans fan, and me and him had bonded over Fields of the Deaf
I
Limb.
loved them. I loved those
Yeah, they
guys.
were great.
They were incredibly good.
Yes.
They were like one of my favorites
Right.
for sure.
Right. I have some friends in the Netherlands who have been keeping track of those guys, and most of them have gone on to do like more punk projects. But I wish that
Wow.
that band would have gotten back together because their second album, the sister album, I thought was even better because it was moving in a more almost like Bauhausy direction.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just thought they were brilliant. I loved them. So I agree with you.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you do have your hearing because I've seen Swans live 3 times, and I think I lost some of mine. Um, about the high end, a lot of that it seemed like the pedal steel was cranked up just as loud as the guitars.
I
So it
agree.
was an experience more like it was a different kind of meditation than what you're doing now. It was
Yeah,
more of a
no.
I'm feeling this wall of vibration rather than hearing it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it had to be that loud, and I agree with you about the pedal steel. When Christoph opened this last set the last time I saw them, and he was the opener, his voice and his pedal steel was so loud that you couldn't articulate. You couldn't hear anything he was articulating. You couldn't hear anything he was saying. It was just like this high end, like noise sounding, and I don't think that's exactly what they should be going for. I did not see the last tour, and I heard from friends in London that was great. So maybe they changed the idea. I don't know what Mike was going to do next. He made the comment that would be the last loud tour. So I've heard that before because I was on this Ones Are Dead tour. So I mean, you never know what's going to happen.
I think the Swans Are Dead tour was
So it's
the
actually
one that I caught at
soundtracks.
the Variety Playhouse.
Yeah. Well, see, the last time I saw them was at the Variety Playhouse.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
became like a church. I'm trying to. I think maybe Sear was the last time I saw them. And I think that was at Terminal West. But
Yeah, no, I saw. Did you see me singing at the Terminal West?
yes,
He had me
yes.
come out, and that was terrible because the monitors had disappeared. And I didn't know what to pitch to, and I heard weird things going on from Christoph. I remember when Michael came out there and was like yelling at the monitor man while I'm trying to perform. It was bad. It reminded me of many, many years ago. So that was kind of weird. I don't know what happened there, but you never know, unless you have your own monitor person, you never know what's going to happen with the monitors.
Right, right. And so you brought about talked about theater and how, the theatrical elements and how I think you mentioned some of the songs were written with theater in mind. Is that something that you are currently or planning to do as far as like touring for this work, something a little more theatrical, or what are your plans in that regard as
I
far
think
as live performance?
this is going to be interesting because Joy von Spain is an extremely talented piano player, electronic artist, and vocalist. Her voice is amazing. So this has allowed me to say Ode de Vie is something we're going to be performing, and so this has allowed me to do the poem, the spoken word for Ode de Vie, and have her do the rapture kind of voices that I did, the background voices that are kind of ecstatic, and so she's going to be doing that, which will free me up to just focus on the spoken. So it's good to have someone that I can trust who can do, the multiple voices that I do on recordings. I do this all the time. I have a different tonality, whether it sounds like a child or whether it sounds like a monster or demonic or some kind of a hag. Or I do this thing with my voice where and then I can have multiple voices, but it's all me. So if I have someone who can do the other voices, see, then that frees me up to not have to play that digitally, or you know what I mean? Like I
Hmm.
can have someone doing that live. So that's going to be the freedom with this. And
And
we're going
she
in,
she also has a metal past. She was from the band
yeah,
Isa Nix, right?
yeah, she has that. And then there's some other projects she has with her husband. So yeah, but I think that's, yeah, she can do all that too. She has that past, correct?
Well, awesome. Well, we're about out of time, but I just wanted to thank you for taking this time with me and sharing your rich history with Swans and your present, which is just as for me compelling. And it's the new album. If you guys have not heard it yet, Sightings. It's out on Consoling Sounds. Make sure to check it out. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Okay, thank you. Great. All right, have a good day. All right, bye.